Περιμένουμε μισό λεπτάκι λίγο καθυστερήσει.
Mr. Spirtzis, the president of the Technical Chamber of Greece, is running a bit late, but let me tell you a few words about him. He studied at the Democrition Technical University. Since September 2010, he is the president of the Technical Chamber in Greece. From his position, he has rather worked from various positions of the Technical Chamber of Greece in various sectors. He was responsible for energy, and he has contributed to the scientific work which aimed at a strategic energy plan for the country. He participates in the planning in the preparation of spatial planning regulation in Greece and in the effort to do away with red tape. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Christos SPIRTZIS has the floor.
Καλημέρα σας.
Ladies and gentlemen, my dear colleagues, we are all aware of the European policy for energy saving, which aims at making Europe independent from its dependency from gas and natural gas. So 70% of this relates to buildings, and that is why we have seen the recent directive on zero energy buildings. Country will unfortunately be lagging behind. We are not well prepared for the reform, for the review of the energy regulation, the well-known KENAK.
Και η προηγούμενη εικόνα ωραία ήταν πάντως.
New picture, but I like the previous image as well. Once again, our country, as I said, is going to be unprepared since the review of the regulation, KENAK, is still in the hands of the ministry, which is doing nothing. But is it the proper strategy to review this regulation after some court decisions and in a hurry? Obviously not. Is it enough to proceed to scientific preparation, or should we be dealing with the matter in a holistic way, especially now when we are running a 7-year recession? In my view, this is a unique opportunity which we should not lose. The energy design should include 5 sectors, in my view. Also take into account the dramatic situation of this country and of the citizens' finances. The first and important thing is a change in legislation, new forecasts and modern regulations which will allow us to build zero energy buildings. For instance, installation of PV panels is not foreseen by the technical legislation so many years after. The installation of small wind turbines is also not foreseen, and a number of other things is only for a discussion. If you need to proceed, it will take you 10 years to get the relevant license. There is no regulation, no calculation methodology is foreseen for the bioclimatic designs, and of course we have a so-called new building regulation, which is proceeding, if possible, worse than before. We need 20 ministerial decisions and presidential decrees for it to be implemented. Nothing has been prepared. There are things which are interesting to us. For instance, the assistance provided to energy buildings, low energy buildings, which we cannot understand. The the town planning offices cannot answer our queries, and the competent ministry does not know what to say. And all these permits are stuck in the middle of this crisis. The second part of design has to do with the production of materials and devices in this country, so that the value added of each new product to stay within the country. We create, and we are about to implement community directives. We are about to implement community policies, but there is no common European policy regarding the production of materials, and which is the part of the manufacturing that belongs to Greece. So if we really want to deal with this deep economic crisis in which the whole of the Western world is currently going through, we need to have a plan for the industrial restructuring of this country. We cannot afford to continue being country of consumers. So when we prepare a regulation, when a regulation is we should copy Germany. Germany is supposed to be deregulating professions and markets. So when we prepare a regulation, we should look on what is being produced and manufactured in this country. This is what all the other European countries do. And so if the new zero building regulation provides for assistance, aid to specific systems and devices, these should be produced in this country, and their value added stay in this country. The third design has to do with the education of engineers and technicians. You are all very well aware with the register of energy auditors. It is a joke. A register was created so that the country would not pay a fine. For about 18 months, we were expecting the ministerial decision, and then it's been 2 years before we heard of the sectors. They asked us to start with the audits while the ministry had not signed the budget. So we were unable to pay our rent, not proceed to the audits. The electronic system is in place. Immediately after the technical chamber elections, we will start with the examinations, with the tests for the energy auditors, and nothing has been done for heating and air conditioning. God help us. If the ministry continues in this manner, we will find ourselves in the sad position of having to complain against our country. Things can go no further. We are suffering, all of us, and we do not have the right to allow people or bodies which have their own agenda and who speculate around this effort. It is not possible for not even one serious check have been carried out to see whether the certificates issued are the appropriate one. The process is as it should be, and whether it is not done by phone. We have seen cases of certificates issued from Thessaloniki to Athens and vice versa by phone. So the whole issue of energy saving, which our country needs to implement, is being ridiculed through delays on behalf of the ministry, and most importantly, because of a practice which makes energy certificates just one more bureaucratic step and not something that is a necessary process. Something else which should be set up is an agency for the certification of the technical professions. Finally, it has reached the Parliament. The competent ministry allows the chamber to set up this body for the certification, with the exception of cooling technicians, electricians, and machine handlers, operators. All the other sectors, private and public buildings, not to be certified. We cannot apply modern systems if we lack certified technicians. So this, in my view, should have been the first step that the country should have done many years ago. The registry was ready, and in my view, this is a first step. Moreover, we, all of us, all engineers, need to realize that a different concept is necessary, a different attitude vis-à-vis our profession. I listen to many colleagues, and they say, why should we be asked to pass an exam in order to become energy inspectors? I'm not saying that this current system is not correct, but we need to look at things from a different point of view. Who does what? The know-how should be certified, should be checked, not in order to safeguard our professional advantages, but in order to safeguard the public interest. If somebody cannot be an electrical engineer just like me and never have practice and hold a stamp which they use as a rubber stamp to rubber stamp designs which have been prepared by others. This is something that we need to change. The system has to change. We have to change. What has to stop is the compulsory attendance of courses. We are all able to read, and if people need to learn something more, they can all attend the courses. The compulsory character of the courses should be abolished, but the exams should not be abolished. Exams should be introduced in various other areas as well. The fourth area of design has to do with the operation and maintenance of buildings. We are the only country which hands over a project, a technical or building project, and we then forget all about it. When we return is when there is an accident, and then it is the technicians, not the engineers, who return. And this is the reason why already in 1980 the technical chamber had proposed the so-called green box, the introduction of a green box relating to the damages suffered by buildings from the Athens and Thessaloniki earthquakes. Many years later, we were able to promote a presidential decree for the energy identity of the buildings that did not only concern the frame, the static aspect, but the building as a whole, its installations, and we have also proposed that it should include maintenance for the architectural parts and the mechanical engineering parts. So by now we would have had a whole registry for the with the country's building stock. This is not something that we did just in order to give jobs to engineers, but because for buildings to be safe, for people to know where they live, what are they about to purchase, the quality of their building. They need to have access to the information about the safety of the building and the quality of the building. In respect of that, we proceeded to make a survey about the deaths from electrocution in this country, 2007, 8, and 9, in 4 hospitals of this country. And in the 4 hospitals, there were 19 deaths, 18 deaths, and 14 or 15 respectively in 2007, 8, and 9. In 2014, this should be a joke. It is not possible for our building stock, for the miserable maintenance procedure, the non-existent regulations, to continue in the same manner. This is also a milestone for our profession. We are all very well aware that in the big urban centers we cannot continue building in the same manner. This is not a sustainable model. We need to proceed with a different attitude, with the refurbishment of buildings and new activities. So the energy identity of any building is, in our view, a strategic tool to achieve this objective. Unfortunately, and despite the fact that the Technical Chamber of Greece had sent a bill, the text of a bill to the ministry 3 years ago, consultation started only 3 months ago. The political leadership is not willing to proceed in this manner. We are afraid that they are ready to initiate one more bureaucratic process, because everything that does not happen is related to micromanagement strategies inside the public sector. The fifth, and before I go to the fifth aspect, I would like to tell you that the Technical Chamber of Greece has submitted 3 technical fishes, which we are ready to for the building permits electronically with the energy system and the electronic licensing of industrial buildings. The electronic system for building services is ready for the past 2 weeks. The ministry has not assigned the 3 offices which should undertake this. We will dare start on our own in collaboration with the municipalities, because if we keep on waiting for the ministry, this will never happen. The fifth sector, which is the most important one, relates to financing. How can we run such applications in times of crisis? Our proposals are in the opposite direction of the house savings program, which has unfortunately turned into a program that is not financed by the banks. Most of the applications are stuck. The processes were wrong. The most important phase of the program was non-existent. That was the design stage. In this country, any design is deemed to be a curse. And in this, we have all our responsibility, because any designs prepared by us were practically non-studies, non-designs, so we need to proceed differently. So, what are our plans? Since the ministry and the political system in this country are not aware of these practices, and are not willing to implement the proper practices, it is not the right thing for us to prepare a regulation and then to present this through the media, to have the owner's representative to say that you are just imposing more taxes or more fees on the people. 75 colleagues have worked in order to prepare this regulation, and in the end to see it becoming deteriorating into a bureaucratic process. So we need to change our attitude. We need to proceed in a more holistic manner so that we can get out of this crisis. So what are our plans? Our electronic system for licensing is ready. So we need to exercise pressure in order to see the presidential decree for the energy identity of buildings. The second effort that the chamber will undertake on its own, and whoever is willing to assist us is welcome, and we will request ASHRAE, because their assistance is valuable. We need to renew our expertise and domestic production. And at this point, let me say that we hear that the ministry is willing to accept a review of the KENAC, which will be offered by certain branches. I would like to tell them that they should stop with these silly considerations, because the technical chamber will not allow them to proceed. Now, the third element relates to initiatives for companies that will produce devices or innovative processes. We are already in discussion with both banks and the technical universities of this country, which will create, in order to create the business incubators, energy, cooling and heating can be included there. Energy production for renewable energy sources can be included. PV panels or devices, geothermal and energy pumps can be included there. It is a pity for manufacturing companies to close down at this point in time, for the shipyards to close down, instead of proceeding with such activities on issues that the country can succeed in. The fourth has to do with some amendments of the building regulation, the new building regulation, and the introduction of modern regulations and standards. We are in close collaboration with the Hellenic standardization body a lot these days, because of course the new standards have to be translated, they have to be national annexes to them, the engineers have to be informed we should all know where the standards will come from. Whoever is interested in purchasing a standard, they do so in another country, and there it's much cheaper. So the Eurocodes should be provided free of charge to Greek engineers. The users should pay when they use the standard to produce something. Another activity that we are currently promoting is the setting up of an agency for the certification of technical professions. And finally, financing of energy-saving activities. We are moving in two directions in respect of this. One, intervention at the level of Brussels, so that the energy policies at this point in time in this country, it is not possible for a country that officially has 1.5 million unemployed. In actual practice, their number is much higher. Engineers are not included in this number. So such a country should not be made to implement these policies, and for people who are unemployed without social security and are unable to cover their daily needs to have to pay for that. Therefore, we need to interfere at the level of the European Union. Whenever such an attempt is being made to implement such policies all over Europe so that we can protect our European house from energy dependencies, so those who have gained from this need to pay, need to contribute, and our country is not one of them. The European institutions should realize their responsibility, and the negotiations should take that into account. The second issue has to do with our social security organization. 1.5 billion was lost due to the haircut. We have appealed against that. In our view, it is an illegal loss, this haircut. We have therefore requested to replace this money to be paid back with a multi-annual bond, which should be given to a banking consortium. An interbanking collaboration should come up with financing, with funds to finance projects. This is a solution that could give us the money back and be beneficial to engineers and to the country. Therefore, the solutions are there. Proposals have been made. The proposals are specific. We are not speaking without, for the sake of saying something. Submitted proposals which will allow for the country to use the dyeing manufacturing plants in order to produce products that are going to be used in this country anyway. The shipyards can produce excellent turbines. The technology is the same, excellent. There are not so many involved in this sector. It is much better for us to help the production of air turbines than to pay for for natural gas. There are therefore some sustainable proposals which can help the country overcome this crisis to the extent that there is a political will and the participation of engineers. I'm saying this because I would like to ask all of you who are present here to come and vote on November the 24th. Not for me, for anyone you want, but please come and vote. We need to stop acting as if individually. We need to understand that we need to act collectively. We need to debate. We need to prepare ourselves in order to make proposals that will take us out of this crisis. Thank you very much.
Questions for Mr. SPIRTZIS?
Ναι, καλημέρα.
Morning, I'm Manos Dimitropoulos. I am a civil engineer, and for the time being, I'm also an energy auditor. Mr. President, I'd like to touch on two issues. The first, like you said, and you were to the point, certain conclusions have been drawn, and certain remarks are there to be made when it comes to our profession. We used to talk about growth, development, and design, and now we've ended up being just men who are dealing with energy certificates or other sort of documentation. So, well, all is well, but then again, what sort of activities and actions has TE undertaken since TE stands for us? And what sort of actions has TE resorted to deal with the aforementioned issue, and what sort of steps is TE making to achieve growth and development? Because so far it's just theoretical, there's no real growth. Second, we talk about the energy upgrading of our buildings, but we're not discussing the static upgrading of our buildings, despite the fact that we're aware of the fact that we have a building stock, and the building stock here in Greece is quite obsolete. For those who've dealt with static buttressing, and of course there are other colleagues who are working in this field as well, we've come to realize that even studies that were implemented in the old days on the basis of the old standards failed to be implemented properly. For example, when it comes to buttressing those buildings that might have been through an earthquake or are expected to go through one because of the seismogeneity of the area, or those buildings that need support because they're about to collapse, we've all in this field realized that F5 per 40, as the old studies used to claim was necessary, still that principle was not adhered to, which goes to show that we have a big issue when it comes to steadying our buildings and solidifying them in view of a forthcoming earthquake. What has TE done about that? Well, the response is this. I'm not going to make you happy because we have not become middlemen now because of the energy certificates or the audits. We used to be like that even in the good old days, because, my dear colleague, we were not really working on studies and surveys or designs. We were just issuing permits back in the old days. We were not supervising nor were we monitoring the construction of works. We quite often, in most specialties, were just there but not supervising, not really throughout. So we're all responsible for what's happened. And we, on an individual basis, but also on a collective basis, are to be blamed for the situation we're faced with today. In the old days, we would just produce rudimentary studies and designs, and then someone would go to the building permits authority. We would use one way or another to get the building permit eventually, and then we would do something else instead. We wouldn't monitor or follow up on developments and construction. So we've always sort of dealt with documents in the old days, and we're just middlemen in that sense, and we're still acting like that. We're just messing with documents still. All right, then. It appears that there are some comments that are being made from the audience, but unfortunately it's impossible to listen to those comments because the gentleman is not using a microphone. But Mr. SPIRTZIS says, well, right, but it always depended on whether the business person or the constructor or the developer were people who were conscious enough. Yes, but then again now we are just fussing with the documents and we're not doing anything. In reality, we are not producing work, real work. You're right, but then again, this energy audits and issuing energy certificates are not jobs that involve us fussing with documents. These are part and parcel of the work, of the business of an engineer. Even when we are called upon to on whether the illegal constructions and buildings will be legitimized or not, and how, this is also part and parcel of our real profession. Now, if we issue certificates or allege that we do our audits over the phone, then yes, this can be a problem. You see, when we are faced with illegal construction and such activities, we also need to pay real visits and do those physical audits. I'm going to give you an answer. Just allow me to give you an answer. TE, you want to know what TE has done, the technical chamber. Well, my dear colleague, the technical chamber is not an omnipresent God, unlike what people might tend to believe. The technical chamber has produced CANAC. It has also worked on the software. It's playing an institutional role, and in order for the technical chamber to go on, this is what it needs to do. We, for the sake of the government, also produced a presidential decree for the energy identity of buildings, and the state did not do anything with that. We, as a technical advisor of the Greek state, made suggestions and recommendations for more bills, but the government did not act on them. We are not the ministry, nor are we the Greek government, so we cannot impose our views on governments in power or ministers in office. In order for TE to be able to in order for its voice to be strong, dear colleague, we all have to be there, all of us. We have to be there, be physically present, and we fail to be there in more obvious things. So I'm not surprised when we fail to be there when it comes to legislation. In other words, TE, the technical chamber, has worked on the regulations. The technical chamber also has worked on the presidential decree, as well as the ministerial decision on the illegally constructed buildings and their foundations. We're still working in this field. I don't think that any of the aforementioned was ever obvious to the world, and I don't believe that anyone 2 years ago, when we were, in terms of our line of business, we were faced with Pakistani-like conditions, in the sense that we were doing very, very bad. I don't think that or rather, I think that TE is doing what is expected to do. But then again, the technical chamber is not an abstract notion. TE, the technical chamber of Greece, is each and every one of us. It's not just the president. It's not like everyone who is a member of the technical chamber has entrusted the president thereof and the board with a role, and they are doing nothing else in the meantime until the next elections. Moreover, we can't achieve growth and development, my dear colleague, if we don't have a national plan that will have nothing to do with the post-World War model. We have productive infrastructure, but then again, both the Greek population and the Greek business activities are only present in two metropolitan areas, respectively Athens and Thessaloniki. We can't expect to have production that way. Amidst a crisis, it's impossible not to have a national plan in place, a plan that will provide for the needs of this country in terms of services and products, because we do have an advantage in various fields. What has the technical chamber done in the meantime? And this is part and parcel of the wager we're faced with from now on. We have to be one of the bodies that will still pitch in through new recommendations and proposals. It was not our job to provide a national plan in view of the productive restructuring of the country, but we're going to work on that regardless. We're going to produce a national plan, help produce one. And we're also looking forward to carrying out reforms in certain fields, and reforms with regard to certain processes and procedures to ensure security and safety, and also overcome the obstacles of yesterday. Let me give you an example. We tracked down and recorded the licensing times, how long it takes for any license to be issued. On average, for any industrial plant to start its activities, it takes 7 years. Suppose you have an investor who wants to set up an industrial plant. if they want to amortize their investment, not just get a license, 7 years is a very long time. If we really want to achieve growth and development, we cannot afford to wait for, say, 15 or 20 years for any business plan to mature. We cannot afford to wait for 15 years for a new motorway to be constructed. It should not be permissible for us to wait for a decade to have a master plan in any region. What did the Technical Chamber of Greece do instead? Instead of coming up with proposals and recommendations, we decided that we were going to implement what we say. So we're going to act on what we suggest. So we're going to put in place an electronic licensing system. And so we're going to do away with the disturbances or the twists of the past. And this is going to be a trustworthy system. But it will also make those who are involved in the system, the stakeholders, accountable. So both the surveyors and the public services will be responsible for what they do through this electronic platform. Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Dimitris Papadaniel. What you said is excellent. So I want to ask you, will you be able to stay with us at the panel discussion this evening? Good. I think you have touched upon the essence of the matter, because in Greece we need, from a different point of view, and we need to have a space strategy, a strategy for spatial planning. So see you tonight at the panel discussion then. Mr. President, I will agree with you, but just a comment. What happens with the young engineers and their fees? You said that we can pay, sometimes not pay. You had said that you would look at it, that you would set up a fund to help young engineers so that they do not need to leave the country. I will tell you what happened, because the changes have to do with our own chamber, technical chamber. It's not only third parties are involved with this. 3 times I attempted to start a system for a temporary suspension of professional license, so that all our colleagues who are not working can be covered, because the law does not cover unemployed engineers, so that our colleagues can be exempted from their contributions for 1 year. A number of the members of the board did not vote in favor for that, so it was not approved. What we have already done and what has already changed is that when a colleague is asking to be stricken off, this is possible, because 4 or 5 years ago, the chamber considered themselves to be more powerful than the Almighty, and it was not possible for anybody who asked to be stricken off to be granted permission. We have organized 20 meetings with the competent minister. I will tell you more about this, and one of our main requests was the ministerial decision signed by him, so as to activate the social care branch of our Social Security Fund. We already contribute €10 each. We ask that this should go up to 20, and the unemployed engineers should be covered. Let me remind you that both the minister, Mr. Vrutsis, and the Prime Minister have this already clearly stated that free also will be covered for unemployment and other benefits by the manpower organization, which is responsible for the unemployment benefits. I will call the Prime Minister to remind him. Please call him yourselves. One last question. We're running out of time. Hello, my name is Pantelis Lazaridis. How about the energy actions for heating and air conditioning installations? Is this going to be, are they going to become mandatory? I said so in my speech. It was so foreseen. The ministry has done nothing in this respect. If they continue in this path, we will need to complain against our own country. Yes, I said so in my presentation. Hope this question will be brief, very brief. Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask you about the energy regulation, KERNAK. The non-existence of a new energy regulation next year is not only related to a fine that our country will have to pay, but all the EU projects which we have just discussed are not going to be, will not be able to be built. We are already in November. Nothing has been done, and there is a problem. What are we going to do next year? So, the issue here is that some are already preparing a new regulation. When is the technical chamber going to do something about it in cooperation with the ministry? Well, it's difficult for me to answer the part relating to our collaboration with the ministry. It takes two to tango. After we have given them the draft of the regulation, our relations have not been very smooth, and many of you in this hall are aware of that. So we intend to do what we have also done in the past. That is, we will proceed according to our own proposal. I am sure that the ministry will adopt it, if not for any other reason, just because they are unable to deal with these issues themselves. Not only are they unable to prepare new regulations or review the existing ones, they were even unable to set up a very simple system which was required in order to organize the exams for energy inspectors, energy auditors. The answers that were requested in relation to the new building regulation. The ministry has started a long time ago, but they are unable to proceed for many reasons. In November, the 2% was abolished. They did not have a budget up until the August, when the ministers changed. We were unable to do anything, not even pay our rent, because our budget, which came from the ministry, 2%, this 2%, we did not have. So we were only paying our staff and worked without pay. So, if things were running more smoothly, we would have proceeded with the observatory, with the Center for Renewable Energy Sources, and with all those who were involved in the effort last time. Look at Article 25, if I'm not mistaken, of the building regulation, and send your own version of what this means. I'm sure that the versions will be many and very different one from the other. So what we need to do for the new programming period, and I would like you to know that, is that the Technical Chamber of Greece was became the leading body for the Mayor's Pact. That happened 2 years ago. This is a project whereby the municipalities will try to save energy. So, to promote energy efficiency with the municipalities, we will try to help all municipalities comply with that so as to save some money from the new community funding. Everything else provided for in the new programming period is so difficult that it will be impossible for this country to absorb the relevant amounts. The only possibility to absorb some funds will be from energy efficiency measures in collaboration with the municipalities. So we need to proceed not only for state-owned buildings, but for privately owned buildings. Thank you very much. Mr. Spirtzis.
Questions for me? No, just a minute of your time. We would like to present you with this commemorative plate because you are an active member, that is, the technical chamber is an active member of our ASA, and ASA is something that Ken is going to elaborate on.
If I may say a couple words in English. The ASHRAE Associate Society Alliance is an alliance of approximately 60 different country technical organizations that are involved in the heating, ventilating, air conditioning, and refrigeration areas. The benefit of this alliance is that we get together on an annual basis and we share what each other are doing around the world relative to each other. Not in trying to say that one country is doing it better than another or anything else, but that we might actually glean good information, both technical or even how we're dealing with our membership and the engineers in a given country or the operations of buildings, and provide that information back to our own organization so we can help better run our organizations. And we sincerely appreciate the Technical Society in Greece and the Technical Chamber in Greece and everything that you've done in participating in the Associate Society Alliance. Thank you again.